Hey there everybody, Pete Pardo here from Sea Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Questions and Answers. Today is Sunday, March the 31st. April Fool's Day is tomorrow. Can you believe it? Today we're going to answer some of your questions that you guys have left for me over the last 2 weeks. We'll try to get to as many of them as we possibly can. Remember, if you don't hear your question, that means it's been asked for before. And quite frankly, that's a trend I've been seeing quite a lot lately. So the future of this show kind of depends on how many new and exciting questions we get going forward, because I would say probably close to half of the questions that you guys left last week, or 2 weeks ago actually, were all repeat questions, things that I've answered before, some that were even asked and answered in the same episode that you commented on. So a real easy way to go and see if your question has been answered before, just go to the previous episodes and scan through the comments. That's where the questions are coming from. So you don't have to go and re-watch the episodes. Just go and scan the comments and you'll see if it's been asked for before. And I'm usually pretty good about getting to most of them. So let's see what happens, all right? So also wanted to bring another topic up. A bunch of you have asked me either commenting on some of the videos or sent me private messages about being able to donate, like on a monthly basis, some funds to the to this channel. And my response, as always, is thanks. That's great. I really appreciate it. But the way you can help out from a financial perspective is when you turn on one of my videos, let the ad run. Let the little banner ad go. Keep that up on the bottom throughout the duration of the video, or occasionally just clicking on one of the ads and just going to the page wherever it directs to. Remember, Google and YouTube have these algorithms that hopefully choose ads for you based on your browsing history. So in a lot of cases, you might see some ads for products or other websites or something like that that might be of interest to you. So that's how you'd help me out, okay? Because I make a little bit of money based on people watching the ads or clicking the ads or letting the ads run. So if you can just kind of let those things go without instantly clicking away from them, that's how you'll help me. All right. So, but thanks. I appreciate the sentiment about donations, but for now, we're not gonna go that route. Just let the ads run. Okay, that'll help me greatly. So let's get started. So the first question from Steve Bernier. Hey Pete, thanks for another great show. I'm guessing you're a big Allman Brothers band fan. How about a history of? Also, do you have a list of planned concerts for this year? My list so far: Uli John Roth, The Musical Box, Robin Trower, Dead & Company, Iron Maiden, Rolling Stones, The Who. Also, P.S. Thoughts on the Mark Farner band in concert. We saw Grand Funk last year. Was okay. All right, let's go back to the beginning here. So, yes, I am a big Allman Brothers fan. As far as a history of, I don't have a history of planned for right now, but Dan Brown and I have talked about doing a top 10 song show together. So that's definitely going to happen probably sometime over the next a couple of weeks to a month. So you can look forward to that. As far as what concerts I have planned for this summer, so far, at least ones I have tickets for, Judas Priest and Uriah Heep coming up this spring. Dream Theater, going to see them in New Jersey. Michael Schenker Fest, I believe that's coming up pretty soon. Or maybe that's in May. I'm trying to figure which one is next. I think the Dream Theater might be next, actually, in a couple weeks. Michael Schenker Fest in New York City. Rolling Stones at MetLife Stadium, which, if you haven't heard by now, their tour has been postponed. Apparently, Mick Jagger has some sort of an illness that his doctors are insisting he not tour and get treated. Hope he's okay. So that just kind of waiting for my date in New Jersey to be rescheduled. Yngwie Malmsteen going to see down in Jersey sometime later this summer. And King Crimson at Radio City Music Hall in September. Looking forward to that 50th anniversary tour, right? So that's all I got on the agenda so far. As far as thoughts on the Mark Farner band, I have not seen Mark Farner live ever. I haven't heard any of Mark Farner's solo stuff other than those first two he did back in the, when was that? I think he was still in Grand Funk when he did those, right? Late 70s? I don't know, he did those first two solo albums he did. Those are actually pretty good. Have not gone to see him live. He's played around a bit. I just haven't checked him out. I saw Grand Funk, the current band, 3 years ago maybe. I had a lot of fun. I thought it was really good. Would have been better if Mark was there, sure. But I think in this current incarnation, they still put on a good show. They play a lot of the songs you'd expect. So I can't really compare too much, but yeah, I'd love to see the original trio, absolutely. From Majid, who's your favorite Yngwie Malmsteen vocalist, and what do you think of Yngwie's vocals? I think my favorite singer who's ever been in Yngwie's band is Jeff Scott Soto. However, I'm not sure if the Jeff Scott Soto we heard back on the first album, Marching Out, is the best Jeff Scott Soto. I think he's gotten to be a much better singer in like the last 15, 20 years than he ever was with Yngwie. Although my favorite Yngwie album of all time is Marching Out, and I think he's great on that. Personally, I love Joe Lynn Turner with Yngwie. I thought that the Odyssey album was amazing. And I think at that point in time, that was probably some of the best, Joe's best vocals obviously were on those couple Rainbow albums and that album, if you ask me, in my personal opinion. So I don't know, and Mark Bowles was really good too, but not a lot of, only basically the one album there. Ripper Owens I thought sounded great in Yngwie, so it's kind of hard to say. The fact is, none of these singers stuck around long enough for it to really make a dent. That's the scary thing. And so it's kind of hard to say who my favorite vocalist is. I think my favorite singer out of all of them is Jeff Scott Soto. Probably Tim Ripper Owens, though, might have been the most impressive on any Yngwie album. I thought that was a marriage made in heaven. I'm surprised they didn't make that last a little longer, but I do love Joe Lynn Turner on that Odyssey album. So it's kind of hard to say. And what do I think of Yngwie's vocals? They're okay. I'd rather him with a singer. That's just what it comes down to. They're not terrible. He's just kind of got this kind of bluesy kind of voice, and I don't know. I like to see a really strong vocalist up there in front of Yngwie just belting out while Yngwie's doing his thing. That's just me. So, I'd pass on Yngwie singing his own stuff, and if I were him, I'd get another singer. But anyway, from Thomas Allen. Do you like Doro Pesh, and have you ever heard Disciples of Power? They're death metal from Canada. I like Doro Pesh. I don't dislike her. I don't go and collect all her music, and I do have some Doro CDs and most of the Warlock catalog, and she's cool. But she's not like top of the line for me. Good voice, nice woman. I've met her, and seen her live a couple times, but I don't dislike Doro. I'm not a huge fan, but I do like her. As far as Disciples of Power, I've only heard the Power Trap album. That's pretty good, old-fashioned, old-school death metal. Like that. From Moonspell67, have you heard SMV Thunder? Stanley Clark, Marcus Miller, and Victor Wooten. For me, a different style of music. Excellent stuff. Yeah, those guys, three of the best bass players out there, right? How can it not be good? Kind of cool to hear, like, three lead bass players, fronting a little band or project. So, definitely like all three of them by themselves and like them together. If you haven't, any of you folks on here or even Moonspell, go onto YouTube and check out those guys doing a cover of Michael Jackson's Beat It. Very, very cool. From Anconia's Place, hey Pete, what are your thoughts on the Accidentally on Purpose album by Gillan Glover? Well, I think I've commented on that before. I have it. I'm a huge Purple fan. I'm not nuts about that album. It's okay. Definitely one of those kind of Purple projects that I reach out for the least. It's okay. It's kind of mellow, kind of, it's got that kind of island feel to it. It's a little funky. It's got the, they got the Calypso thing going on. It's okay. I don't listen to it often at all, though, so as you can tell, not one of my favorites. From Gene Kirsten, another great video, Pete. At 62, I find myself discovering new music from your wealth of knowledge. Awesome. 2 albums I want to ask you about. The album Detroit with Mitch Ryder and Steve Hunter, a fantastic heavy album with great covers, and second, Keith Hartley's Half-Breed, a fantastic album of early British blues with terrific guitar and heavy Hammond organ. Give them both a listen. Well, I have the Keith Hartley albums. I have the entire catalog from Keith Hartley, and those are fantastic, guys. If you have not heard any of the Keith Hartley albums, very, very cool. They're kind of like maybe a little more rockin', a little more progressive style, maybe compared to like Ainsley Dunbar's Retaliation. It's definitely like kind of like blues rock, but they got like horns and things and keyboards, and I like the Keith Hartley stuff a lot. That's a really good album. You really can't go wrong with any of them. It's probably one of their top 3, easily. Definitely good. As far as the Detroit album, I have heard that album on and off over the years. I don't own it. And then after your question here, I went and listened to it again on YouTube, and I was like, yeah, I need to get that. So that's in my cart to purchase next time I buy something from Amazon. From Audiophile Tubes, hey Pete, are you into the October Project at all? Great band if you haven't heard of them. They're pleasant enough, but they're not. That's just not my cup of tea. She's got a great voice, really good singer. It's just that's not the type of music that I would, reach for at all. So, but I can see how people love them. It's like I said, it's very pleasant music, nice and melodic, kind of lush, but not really for me. From J.K. Baka 41, are you familiar with guitarist Kazumi Watanabe? Especially the two albums of Bruford and Berlin, The Spice of Life and The Spice of Life 2. Your thoughts? Oh, he's awesome. I was big into Kazumi back in like the late 80s, early 90s. Those two albums are fantastic fusion albums. Really underrated and probably unknown by a lot of people. Highly recommend those. Also, check out his Mobo Volume 1 and 2 albums. Those are really, really good. Those were Japanese-only releases. God, I used to have all of those on cassette. I haven't replaced any of those Kazumi Watanabe albums on CD. I had all the cassettes, though. I'm going to have to do that. Killer stuff. Great guitar player. Great fusion player. J.K. Baka has a second question. R&B question for you. Do you like the Temptations psychedelic soul hard funk period? I bought the psychedelic soul compilation many years ago, and it blew me away. Outside of a couple songs on that comp, I didn't really know that side of them. Great tunes. Yeah, groove-laden funk, dude, right? Pretty cool. Kind of neat to hear that kind of stuff from the Temptations. Got a band that just was around for so long, right? From Steve Morris, are you a fan of the Cars? If so, could you do a top 10 song show? I like the Cars. I don't own any Cars albums except for like a really good compilation. I don't dislike them. I like most of the Cars stuff, but it wouldn't make sense for me to do a top 10 song show because basically all I know is what's on that compilation, right? So, good band, but I'm probably not the guy to do a Cars show. From Gear Lad, as always, great content. Here's my question for you this week. If you came into a substantial sum of money, say $100 million, would you bolster your music collection with vinyl again? I'd have to buy another house, man. Like, what, you want me to replace all this stuff with vinyl? I don't know if I'd do that, to be honest. So I may buy like a really nice stereo and, maybe start buying a little vinyl here and there, but I wouldn't, just go crazy with vinyl. If I won $100 million, man, I'd have a house full of Gibson Les Pauls and some really nice expensive guitars and, get whatever my wife would want and, take care of my folks and, buy a second house somewhere nice. That sort of stuff. I don't know if I just go out and start buying vinyl like crazy. Would I jump back into it? Maybe. Perhaps. I don't know. Good question, though. From Earl Joy. Pete, what's your opinion of the American band Kaleidoscope with David Lindley? That Side Trips album is pretty intriguing. It's got kind of like a weird mix of styles. It's kind of obviously very psychedelic because it's from that era. That's when they come out, 68, 69. Little bits of country in there. Some of it almost sounds like kind of jug band stuff. It's not really my cup of tea, but it does have its moments. And obviously, David Lindley's a pretty damn talented guitar player. So, not an album I own. Probably not something I'd buy, but, it's intriguing. Got some good stuff on it. From H. Metal Justin. Okay, Pete, if you had to pick just one, Genesis or Yes? God. Man. That is a tough question, my friend. It's almost impossible to answer. If you ask me which band is my favorite of the two, I always lean a little towards Genesis. But I think Yes probably has some of the stronger albums. Man. I don't know. How about I just pick Gentle Giant instead? You know what? I'm going to pick Genesis today. It's such a hard question. It's almost impossible. Almost impossible. That for me is just as hard as picking between like Deep Purple and Black Sabbath, right? Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to go with Genesis today. Tomorrow I could answer yes, but who knows? From Nechepsos Moon, mentioning the Super Loud, you reminded me about seeing the Misfits in Devil's Reign tour. Loved it loud, but that was insane because the mosh circle fights. Your favorite songs from the Misfits? As I've said before, I'm not really much of a punk fan. All right, and I know the Misfits are beloved by many for their style of horror punk and what have you, but honestly, I really don't know. Other than like the couple popular radio hits they had, I really don't know much about them. Other than obviously I love Danzig in his own band after he left the Misfits, but just the whole punk scene is not really my thing. So I don't really have a set of favorites. Sorry. From Amadeo Eichberg. Brian May teamed up with Eddie Van Halen for the Starfleet project, released in 1983. It contains 3 stellar tracks, with my favorite being the title track. If you have not heard the trio of songs, check it out. If you know Starfleet project, what are your thoughts? Yeah, I actually owned that EP, mini LP, whatever you want to call it, back in the day. It's pretty cool. Yeah, that title track is great. You know, Let Me Out and Blues Breaker are both cool too. It's just a lot of guitar jamming, but I think so if you're interested in, like, you know, blues guitar solos, it's very cool, and I think the Starfleet song is pretty wild, though. I dig it. From Marvel Fan 45, love your videos. I know you're a heavy metal rock and other types of music channel, but what's your opinion on Weird Al? I don't have one. I never gave a shit about Weird Al Yankovic, and I don't now. A lot of people dig his little parodies and things like that. I don't know, just didn't do anything for me. From the Dallas Space Cowboy, really sorry about the repeat question, Pete. I don't even remember what it was. I do watch every episode of the show, but I don't remember every single question people ask. I'll try not to do it again. There you go. My question this week, thoughts on Glenn Hughes' solo career. I recently started digging through his catalog, and it's damn good. Songs in the key of rock and soul mover are phenomenal. I mean, yeah, Glenn has got a ton of solo albums. They're all sitting there on the shelf behind me over there. And I like a lot of them. You know, some are hit or miss. For a while, he was pumping out a new one, like it seemed like every year. And, you know, some of them were more like kind of like funky type of stuff. Some were more hard rock, little bits of metal here and there. I think his last couple have been really, really strong. And some of his really early ones are excellent. He did one... Oh, God, I'm forgetting the names. Anyway, it doesn't really matter, but his last one was great, because I think him playing with Black Country Communion has really gotten him back into doing serious, like, 70s style heavy rock, and his most recent album is totally in that vein. So I love Glenn. He's just such a great singer and a totally nice guy. And yeah, he's got so much solo where you really can't go wrong with any of his solo albums. They're all good. How about a best to worst of albums for thrash metal band Overkill? Funny you should ask that, because Steve Keeler, my friend from Rock Fantasy, and I actually talked about doing that, so that's probably coming up in a couple weeks, all right? From Robert Stacy, could you do an all-past supergroup, example like guys like Keith Moon and Lemmy, etc., etc.? Okay. Without overthinking this too much, here we go. Ronnie James Dio on vocals, Lemmy on bass, John Bonham on drums, Tommy Bolin and Gary Moore on guitars, and John Lord on Hammond. Boom. How about them apples, huh? From Ian McLennan. Hi, Pete. As always, loving the shows. Thank you. Have you ever heard the British group called Hard Stuff, which included John Ducan and Paul Hammond, formerly of Atomic Rooster? Also in the lineup were vocalist Harry Shaw, formerly of Curiosity Shop and Latterly Export, and John Gustafsson, formerly of Quatermass. They only released 2 albums, Bulletproof in 72 and Bolex Dementia in 73. Classic early 70s hard rock. Yeah, I have both of those. They're both quite... I mean, the Bulletproof album is much better than the Bolex Dementia album, but they're both very solid. Also, and if you like Atomic Rooster, you probably dig those guys. It's really, really good, except without all the Hammond organ, obviously. Check out, too, if you haven't, Ian, the Bullet album called Entrance to Hell on Angel Air Records. That's actually the Hard Stuff recordings before they changed their name to Hard Stuff. A couple of the tracks made it onto that first Hard Stuff album, Bulletproof. But the Bullet album is actually pretty heavy, if you can believe it or not. So definitely check that out. It's called Bullet, The Entrance to Hell on Angel Air Records. That came out, I don't know, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that. From Tim Brennan, how's it going, Pete? What a great channel you have. Thank you. Thanks for switching me on to so much stuff I've never heard. Here's my question. What are your favorite Yes members' solo albums, and can you rank them? For me, my go-to is Chris Squire's Fish Out of Water. Interested to hear your thoughts. Keep it coming, wise one. All right, as far as ranking them, geez, all right, well, here, let me just rattle off the ones that I really like a lot, that I would even consider being on a list. Bruford's One of a Kind. It feels good to me. I know that's kind of a band, but to me, that's Bill Bruford's solo stuff. Chris Squire, Fish Out of Water, absolutely. Rick Wakeman's Six Wives of Henry VIII and Journey to the Center of the Earth are my 2 favorites from him. John Anderson, Olias of Sun Hillo. Steve Howe, the Steve Howe album, and Turbulence. Okay. Trevor Rabin's Can't Look Away, as well as Jack Aronda's pretty good. And Peter Banks, The Two Sides of Peter Banks. Now, I don't know if Tony Kaye's Badger, One Live Badger, would be included here, because that's not really a Tony Kaye solo album. So I don't know. That's kind of on the fence. But as far as my how do I rank them? I mean, Chris Squire's is damn good. That might be my favorite out of all these. But the the two Brufords are awesome also. So for me, the number one slot would either be a tie or be one or two between Bruford. I guess One of a Kind is probably God, they're both great. One of a Kind, it feels good to me. And with Squire, Fish Out of Water, those are definitely at the top. Coming up after that, I mean, the Wakemans are great. I like the John Anderson. That's really the only John Anderson solo album I like. That's quite good. The Steve Howe's are very good. The Banks is great too. Then I like the Trevor Rabin stuff. So I don't know. I would have to really think about where to place those. But I think definitely the two Brufords and the Squire are definitely at the top, followed by the Wakemans, and then the Anderson, and then I'd have to figure it out from the rest of those. But those are, without a doubt, those are the strongest solo releases. All right, and again, you can, whether Badgers should be included there or not, I guess is debatable. But if you take them out, those are all my favorite of all the Yes member solo albums by far. From Marvel Fan 45, good question by the way. Marvel Fan 45, what Deep Purple albums would you recommend? So I'm assuming you don't have any. I'm going to assume that. I'm going through a tough time and your videos help me. Okay, hopefully you're not like a tough time in life. And if you are, I'm very sorry. Hopefully things go better for you. Or maybe you're having a tough time deciding what Deep Purple albums to get. So either way, let's see what we can do here. So where to start? Okay, let's start with studio albums first. The five I would recommend to you right off the bat, okay, probably the best place to start with Deep Purple, is In Rock, Fireball, Machine Head, Burn, and Perfect Strangers. Okay? If you have any of those or have all of them, or you go out and get those, right, and you want where to go next, kind of for like nice flavor of some of the other stuff, I would check out Now What, Infinite, and Perpendicular. That's from the current lineup. Those are my three favorites from the current lineup. Check out Come Taste the Band. That's the last album they did before they broke up for a number of years. That's with the late Tommy Bolin. And Stormbringer. Okay? That's where I would go next. If you want to get a couple live albums, Made in Japan, obviously, and Made in Europe. Can't go wrong with either one of those. So that's where I would start. Hopefully everything's okay. If you're just going through a tough time discovering the music of Purple, that's where you should start. If you're going through a tough time with things in life, hope it works out for you. From Lonnie Vire. And Lonnie, I apologize to Lonnie and anybody else if I mispronounce your name. You guys got to understand, I know a lot of you have tried to make corrections on how to pronounce your names, but we've got hundreds of people commenting on these. I can't remember how to pronounce all your names, even though some of them come up every week. So again, if I mispronounce your name, I apologize. But Lonnie Vire, one more top 10 idea, but a different concept. How about a top 10 favorite Roger Dean album covers? Okay, I've added that to my list. That's a good one. I think I'm going to do a favorite album cover show, but what I might also do is I might do a couple like top 10 shows, like especially for guys like Hypnosis, Roger Dean, guys who what's the other guy who did all the Magnum covers? Rodney Matthews, right? So what I may do is I may do like some separate shows of just those artists and give you my favorite covers. So good idea. Thank you so much for that, Lonnie. From David M. Pete, great Q&A as usual. What are your thoughts on the band Zazen? Mystery School is a killer. Then they signed onto the Miramar and they became new agey. I searched online. They have some killer stuff prior to Mystery School. How about a worst to best of Anthony Arjun Lucason's releases, including Ayreon, Star One, Guilt Machine, etc., etc., etc.? Oof, it's a lot of stuff, man. Personally, I really struggle with doing this myself. I would have to put Electric Castle as my favorite, as that was the first one I heard and was sold. If you haven't checked out the Canadian prog metal band Ascendia and their release, The Line of the Jester, you should. I believe you will like them. All right, a lot of stuff going on here, David. As far as Ascendia is concerned, yeah, they're quite good. I actually never heard of them before, and they've got a lot of professional videos and a ton of music, and really good. That singer is awesome, too. I'm going to look into them a little bit more. That was quite good. Thanks for turning me on to them. As far as Zazen, I went and listened to a bunch of their stuff. Yeah, I mean, they got their moments. I think some of the earlier stuff is decent. The guitar player is pretty good. A lot of tasty stuff going on there. But a lot of what I heard is very new agey, mellow, just kind of drifting, boring type of stuff. So didn't make me want to go too much deeper. And as far as like best to worst of Ayreon, I mean, I might do an Ayreon, right? I think I have most of the Star One. I think I have the Guilt Machine. if I'm not mistaken. Those Ayreon albums are great, though, aren't they? Oof. From George Lammy, Eddie Trunk recently postulated that Van Halen may have the best 4-album opening to a career ever. Not a bad pick. Who would you say has the best first 4, though? How about a little band called Black Sabbath? Right? Another band called Led Zeppelin. Ever heard of them? Eddie? Don't get me wrong, the Van Halen ones, of course, those first 4 Van Halens are great, but as great as they are, man, I don't think they hold a candle to the first 4 from Sabbath or the first 4 from Zeppelin. Just my opinion, of course. But they're good. I mean, obviously, those 3 bands, that might be the best opening 4 of any bands ever, right? For me, I mean, obviously, this is me we're talking about here, right? The Black Sabbath ones that's real special to me. And I think those first 4 Black Sabbath albums are just like classics. Beyond classic. Is that such a thing? Beyond classic. Would there be a Van Halen if it wasn't for the Black Sabbath albums and the Led Zeppelin albums, right? Who knows? From John Hodgson. Question. I have never heard you mention bands like Napalm Death. Do you rate any of the 80s UK grindcore bands? I'm not a grindcore fan at all. Sorry. Don't get it, don't like it. I've tried. Napalm Death does nothing for me, and I know a ton of people love them. Can I tell you? It's weird because I love a lot of death metal, but grindcore stuff, man, just doesn't compute for me. You know, you can't like everything, right? From BM Bolt. Hi, Pete. Not sure if you've been asked this yet. What kind of beer do you drink? It's been asked many times, but I'll answer it again. So BM Bolt is a big IPA drinker. All right, for me, I like a great Pilsner. I like a great lager. I like pale ales a lot. I love the flavors of IPAs, but the problem with IPAs is this. Everybody makes them now, and so many of them are so damn strong. You know, I'm getting to be an older guy. I can't drink these 7, 8, 9, 10, 11% IPAs. I just can't do it. But I love a good session IPA. Something that's like, you know, maybe 4 to 5, right? 4.5, something like that. Full flavor session IPA, you know, so all the flavor without all the shit that's going to give me a headache. I love the new kind of juicy IPA craze that's going on right now. So it's again a lighter IPA with big citrus, hazy finish. You know, you look at it, it's just like hazy and it's orangey color or, you know, bright yellow. And you take a sip and all you're tasting is like tangerine and pineapple and a little bit of lemon and grapefruit and just refreshing and wakes up your mouth. Not too much hops. You know, I think I've gotten away from the IPAs that it's all like, you know, pine and you know, bitter and all that kind of, you know, I've just had it to here with that stuff. But I like a nice lighter porter too. I like a good stout, but I'm not into the imperial stouts. So I'm not into the stouts that are like a 10, 11, 12%. You know, it's like where you drink half of one and you're like, it's like you drank a half a bottle of whiskey or something like that. It's just, I like the lighter stouts. I like some of the lighter chocolate stouts. I like the caramel porters, that sort of thing. So that's kind of what I go for. You know, in the summertime, I go for like lighter beers. You know, right now, I've just, you know, I've been drinking some porters and stouts the last couple of months. Been starting to get into like these session IPAs and the juicy IPAs last like month or two. But I like a good Pilsner or lager, you know, all year round. And we're not talking about Budweiser kind of stuff. You know, I may on occasion in the summertime when it's really hot and, you know, I'm going to be out by the pool all day long and I think you know, on Saturday I might be doing a bit of drinking. You know, I may go buy like some, you know, light beers or something like that. But I found last like year or two I've been even not doing that too much, and I'd rather just drink like 4 or 5. You know, if it's a day like that, just drink 4 or 5 just lighter kind of beers, like lighter, like I said, a sessionable IPA that, you know, is not going to bog me down, than have, you know, 8 Miller Lights or Coors Light or Corona Light or whatever the hell, you know. So yeah, I love talking about beer. Can you tell? From Raymond Kaiser, Pete, where do you draw the line on what you consider to be rock versus pop? For example, do you consider REO Speedwagon to be more of a rock band or a pop band or an amalgamation of both? REO Speedwagon's a rock and roll band, all right? They had a big, huge pop hit, actually. They had 2 of them, all right? There's a lot of bands like that they're rock bands who in the 80s, because the record label told them to do so, cranked out pop hits, okay? Like Journey's another one, you know? They're a rock band. They cranked out a couple pop hits, right? But they're a rock band. Phil Collins solo, he's a pop artist, okay? Forget what he did in Genesis. When Phil goes out solo, He's a pop artist. ABBA is a pop band. Okay? There's a difference there. But I think, bands like REO Speedwagon, these kind of like AOR, pop bands or whatever, they're rock bands, but they got some pop hits. It's the way it is. Can totally do both there. From Jet Powers. And Jet, thank you for suggesting. I just want to throw Jet a little kudos here. Jet's been following my other channel, Comic Book Geezers, with my buddy Wild Bill, and he suggested that we do a show like this over on the Comic Book Geezers side, so we are going to do that now. So if any of you guys are into like vintage 60s, 70s, and 80s comic books, specifically Marvel and DC, maybe some independent stuff, come on over to Comic Book Geezers, subscribe, watch the videos we're doing over there. We're showing lots of vintage comics, talking about comics, and thanks to Jet, we're now going to start doing like a monthly question and answer show over at Comic Book Geezers. So go check out our channel over there, find the video that's announcing the new questions and answer show, and throw your questions in there. We'll get to them in a couple weeks, all right? So on to Jet's question for today. Hey, Pete, what do you think of the show The Night Stalker and its later remake, The X-Files? And its later remake plus The X-Files. Okay, when I was a kid, I watched The Night Stalker religiously, and I loved it. Because remember, growing up in the 70s, I was big into like Universal horror monsters and, sci-fi stuff and, Godzilla and superheroes and all that kind of stuff. I was totally into all that stuff. So The Night Stalker for me was like the coolest show ever. Didn't last long. I don't know if I watched the remake. I don't think I did, and I don't remember when that actually aired. And I never really got into the X-Files. I watched parts of like season 1, I believe it was, but I never religiously watched more of it. I mean, I heard a lot of kind of conflicting things from people. Some people thought it was the greatest show ever. Some people were like, it's okay. And I think when I got around to saying, all right, I'm going to investigate the X-Files, because it was way after it initially started running, I think I like rented from Netflix, and this shows you how long ago it was. It was back when Netflix would send out like the DVDs, right? I rented like season 1, and I watched most of that, and I enjoyed it, but I just never went back again. And it's like I try not to. I just don't watch a crap load of TV. I watch a lot of the superhero stuff and a couple other things here and there, and I watch my New York Mets baseball and stuff like that. But you bet the original Night Stalker with Darren McGavin. Hell yeah, great stuff. I think there is a Blu-ray set that has all those in the collection. I need to get that. From Adam Chase Powell. I've been listening to these Q&As trying to find out if you talked about these two bands, but have yet to hear anything. What are your opinions on Coheed and Cambria and the Deerhunter? I don't really know if I've talked about Coheed and Cambria. I don't dislike Coheed and Cambria. I've seen them live a couple times. They're a really good band. I just never fully got into them. I think I had like 1 or 2 of their albums on CD, and I don't dislike them. They just never really gelled with me for whatever reason. Deerhunter, I think I mentioned before. A lot of people ask about them. I don't own any Deerhunter, but everything I've heard, I've really enjoyed. They're a really talented band. I know a lot of people love them. So both really good bands. All right, I'm just not huge into them, but that doesn't mean that I dislike them. From Nick's Texans fan number 1. What are some bands or artists that your friends and family can't believe you don't love, whether it be that you're indifferent to them or flat out dislike them? For me, the people I'm close with who know my musical taste can't believe I don't love Clapton or Fish. Rock on, brother. Thank you, sir. Not so much my family, and not even so much my friends, because most of my friends are in the same stuff to me. But people I know, people I work with, neighbors, all that kind of stuff. There are people who be like, "Oh, you don't like Pearl Jam? You don't like Nirvana?" No. Adele. Like my wife loves Adele, and I'm like, I don't really dislike her. I'm just kind of like, if I never heard her again, I wouldn't care. I know a lot of people who are really into Dave Matthews. I'm like, he's okay. I don't know, but I like a lot of stuff. There's a lot that I like, and you've all heard me say the bands that I don't like, right? The bands that I really don't like, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Motley Crue, Poison, Bob Dylan's another one. I just don't get it. I know a lot of people who are totally into Dylan. Not for me. From Ian Gillard. Hey, Pete, love your channel. Thank you, Ian. Would love to hear your opinions on British band Black Widow. They actually came from Leicester in England, the same city of myself. Would also be interested in your views on the first 2 Quiet Riot albums featuring Randy Rhoads on guitar. Keep up the great work. I will. All right, so let's go to Black Widow. I own all the Black Widow albums. Their first one, Sacrifice, gets all the acclaim because it's got like these, really satanic and occult lyrical themes in there, and I think the band were just kind of going for shock value, and I think they kind of wanted to, or at least the record labels kind of batted them against Black Sabbath at the time, who can be more shocking of the two. But, the music on that first Black Widow album, it's a cool album. I mean, the music's pretty lightweight. There's nothing heavy about it, right? Other than the lyrics and all the song titles. It's really, it's kind of spooky, but there's nothing heavy about it. But actually, their second album, Black Widow, and then Black Widow 2 and Black Widow 3 and Black Widow 4 are actually really good hard rock albums with a lot of cool proto-prog themes going on there. Really good Hammond organ, all right, some tasty guitar work. And actually, by then, they had dropped all of the kind of occult themes, and like everybody kind of forgot about them. It's like, that first album was like, oh, Black Widow, shocking satanic band. They're gonna do battle with Black Sabbath, and then once they dropped all that stuff, it's like people just kind of like, they weren't interesting anymore. But actually, the music is actually very good. So I like those Black Widow albums, actually. They're very good, very underrated, I think. As far as those first two Quiet Riot albums, it's actually funny that you mentioned that you asked this question, because I actually, it was Randy Rhoads' birthday recently, and I hadn't heard any of those Quiet Riot songs in ages. And I never owned any of them, because I think back in the day, they were really hard to get here in the U.S., those first two that he was on before he joined Ozzy's band. And I went on here on YouTube, recently, and I listened to a whole bunch of songs from those albums. They're not very good. I'm sorry. That stuff is just not very good. It's really, really glammy, and the production on it is terrible. And yeah, you can hear, Randy's early guitar style and all that kind of stuff. But man, it's just like night and day compared to what you hear on Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman, even though it was just a short time before. It's amazing what a good producer can do, right? And good material. But yeah, not a big fan of those Quiet Riot albums. I was thinking about, maybe trying to pick those up just for historical purposes. And I'm like, God, why do I need to spend big money, trying to track those down? This shit's not very good. From Leaf Siklasi. Hey, Pete, thanks for introducing us to so much great music. How about a top 10 songs of Pat Benatar? I've added her to my list, my friend. Coming in the future, right? We'll get to it. From Scott Kilpatrick. Hey, Pete, love the shows. Keep them coming. Have you ever heard of the 80s metal band, Canadian, I think, called Piledriver? The album was called Metal Inquisition. I bought it back in the mid-80s because the album cover was so over the top I couldn't tell if it was real or a joke. I'm telling you, Steve Keeler, if you're watching. So Steve owns Rock Fantasy in Middletown, New York, my buddy Steve. And Rock Fantasy back in the mid-80s was like one of the only like heavy metal hard rock record shops on the Hudson Valley here. And I remember going in there, and I was going to college at the time. I would come home on weekends and what have you. And I would just go to Rock Fantasy home from school, and Steve would have all these thrash and all these great metal albums all over the wall. And most of the time you didn't know what any of them sounded like. If the cover looked cool, you'd buy it. And I remember seeing that one. I always call it Death by Flying V, because you got the guy with the mask holding the Flying V over the guy on the floor. And but I never bought it, because I think I bought something else that day that caught my eye even more. But it's not a bad album. There's some good material on it. Some of it's not, but it's kind of thrashy. It's got just mid-80s, metal. Just good. Worth a listen. It is good to kind of hear that after not hearing it for so long. Yeah, crazy album cover, right? From Indie Cult 777, my question this week is if I saw a preview of the Elton John flick coming out. It looks really good in the same vein of the Queen movie. Have you seen the previews, and what are your thoughts on it? I have seen the preview. I think I saw it once. It looks cool. I love Elton, so I'm going to check it out. Of course, now that the Queen movie did such gangbuster business, and now everybody's talking about, the Motley Crue album, The Dirt, or the Motley Crue album, the Motley Crue biopic, The Dirt. They're just going to start making these rock and roll biopics like crazy. You're going to see them coming out of the woodwork now. It'd be interesting to see the Elton one, right? I'm going to check it out. So, from Lisa T. Wouldn't be Lisa without a Jethro Tull question this week, right? All right, what is your favorite 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s albums by Jethro Tull? One album per decade. All right, so from the 60s, I'm going to go with Stand Up. From the 70s, which is obviously the hardest one, and I thought about this quite a bit, I'm going to go with Benefit. I think just Benefit has so many of my absolute favorite Tull songs on it, But I got to give a shout out to Aqualung and Thick as a Brick and Minstrel in the Gallery. They're right behind it. From the 80s, Broadsword and the Beast, and from the 90s, Roots to Branches. Good question. From John Wheatcroft. Hey Pete, love the shows. I always say to the wife that I want to be buried with my vinyl copy of Kiss Alive 2, so I have something to listen to upstairs with the man. And the album means so much to me. If you had to choose one, what would it be? Thanks, John. Well, can I bring a studio album in a live album? Just kidding. Jesus. Well, it'd probably have to be a Purple album. It'd either be In Rock or Made in Japan. I mean, Made in Japan kind of is great. It's so great because it's got like tunes from those first couple albums, you know, with Ian Gillan on it, and it's nice and long and jammy. It would keep me busy for a lot longer than In Rock would. And I feel bad about not putting the Sabbath album in there. I'd say Volume 4. You know what? Jesus. I mean, In Rock is probably one of my favorite studio albums of all time, so I think I'm going to go with that. But man, tomorrow I may tell you Made in Japan, and the day after that I may say Volume 4. So, great question. From Rock Fanatic, just one question this time. Thank you. With you being a music journalist of sorts, and with the reality that journalists in general have things that they are intuitively scornful towards, is there, to you, a point where a song and or artist crosses the line and becomes indefensible on account of their lyrics, compositional methods, or showmanship? Or do you believe that every piece of music and the act that made it deserving of the same potential for reverence, regardless of whether or not you like the aforementioned traits of it? I mean, it's a good question. I mean, you know, the problem is, one of the things that really turns me off about rap music, and not all rap music, but there's a lot of it, that a lot of the lyrics and the stuff that they're spitting out in these tunes, it's offensive to me. All right? I mean, the nonstop, you know, cursing, the expletives, and using the N-word and all that kind of crap, it's just like, I guess because I've gotten older, it's like whenever even like some metal bands do this, they'll throw some, you know, they'll say fuck and this and that and some of the words and whatever, and I'm just like, it starts to turn me off a little bit more later in life now. So, and in fact, sometimes like some bands, you know, and it's not common for them, will have a really cool song and there'll be you know, in the chorus they'll throw an F-bomb in there or something like that, and I'll be like, is that really necessary? You know, it's almost like a turn off for me. But as far as like, I don't know. I mean, I try to be very, you know, not let a lot of that stuff kind of bother me. Okay, because again, when you're a journalist and you're writing, reviewing product for, you know, for a living, or whether it's a hobby or whatever, you kind of have to sometimes look past some stuff like that. So maybe you got lyrics that are overly, you know, I'll use Neil Morse as a perfect example. So, you know, Neil Morse, when he left Spock's Beard, obviously became a born-again Christian. A lot of his early solo albums are really Christian-heavy lyrics, right? God this and God that, and the awakening, and, you know, my transformation, all that stuff. It's really, to me, almost preachy a little bit. And I got to admit, when those first couple solo albums came out, I was like, oh, I just can't take it. Though it was just too in my face. Musically, it's fantastic, though. I've learned to soften my stance on his stuff in recent years, whereas I can kind of appreciate it for what it is. That's his message. Doesn't have to be my message. So it's not easy to do, though, sometimes. So there's two examples for you of how, you know, sometimes it's hard to get past that. From Alex L. On the last show, some gentleman said that the older he is, the heavier and harder music he listens to. That is exactly what happens to me. Still passionate metal headbanger I used to be 35 to 40 years ago. My son recently told me to turn the volume down. It is supposed to be the other way around, right? It should be, right? When I was a kid, my parents used to tell me to turn the volume down. A few days ago, my wife told me that I did not evolve at all. I'm just curious, what is your experience? Does your wife tease you like my wife teases me? Any funny moments? Well, you know, the funny thing is, like my son, he's 30. God, maybe when he was really younger, but he never was like a big, you know, crank up the music to 11, you know, like I used to do. Never really did that much. And you know what it is? Everybody listens to music on headphones nowadays. Nobody cranks music like the old days. I still prefer, I don't listen to a lot of music on headphones unless like at the gym or traveling, you know, on an airplane or in a train or something like that. I like listening to music loud, you know, maybe not as loud as I used to, but I like, you know, I don't like putting stuff in my ears, and you know, but that's what everybody does nowadays, right? People don't experience just kind of like doing and listening and doing, and it's just like, it's just changed a lot. And as far as like, does my wife tease me? I mean, my wife does not like a good chunk of the music I listen to. So I do get teased, like she despises most metal that I listen to. Surely any extreme metal. So if there's like screaming or growling or anything like that, no. She also does not like a lot of the prog or more jammy stuff because she prefers music with vocals. And so if the guitar solo is longer than like 30 seconds, I get the when is the song ending type of thing, right? So, are we not evolving, some of us, from the old school days? Yeah, I still listen to a lot of the same bands that I've been listening to since I was 10, 15 years old. So maybe I haven't evolved. I listen to a lot of other newer bands. I sure do. But the stuff that's near and dear to me is still the older stuff. So, maybe we haven't evolved that much. I like to think that I have because I'm more open-minded to a lot of stuff nowadays than I used to be. But, as far as us still wanting to crank the volume up and the kids nowadays not interested in volume at all, it is what it is, right? How did that happen? Because I remember my parents always telling me it's too loud down there. It's like, so from Steve Syme, Pete, do any of your dogs react to music positively or negatively? My Beagle Mix has never really shown any reaction to my albums. I read that dogs don't hear music the same way we do, but of course every dog is different. My oldest husky, Maya, she just doesn't react to anything. And she used to occasionally, if I was in here playing guitar, she'd come in and just kind of say hi and then turn around and leave. My Great Pyrenees German Shepherd mix, she just doesn't react to music much at all. But if I play it like really loud in the living room on the home theater system, she tends to want to not be around too much. So I'm wondering if it may, like the high pitch frequencies may bother her a little bit. And then my youngest husky, she doesn't really show any reaction to music at all. She used to hate when I play guitar. Like she would come in here, if I was playing through the amp, she would come in and she'd start, huskies do that kind of howling talk thing, and she'd just sit there like, rah, 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 like, so I don't know whether it's because she didn't like it or because I wasn't paying attention to her and she was trying to deter me, put the damn guitar down and come play ball with me or something like that. So, but for the most part, they don't really seem to react much at all. But I guess old dogs are different. From my favorite name on the planet, Spaghetti Lee El Douchebag, Pete, it seems to me that Rory Gallagher is criminally underrated in the USA. Why do you think he never got the respect he deserved? Maybe you can do a best of Rory show in the future. Thanks, from Spaghetti Lee. He never really got the, I think if you look at like some of the other like guitar players who made it big here in the 70s. So, look at like Rick Derringer or Robin Trower, Ted Nugent. I think there was a accessibility about some of the material of those guys that I don't think Rory ever really. Rory was very serious about what he was doing, and I don't really think Rory gave a shit whether he was a best-selling artist or not, or whether he had any hit singles. And it was all about that. I mean, come on, let's face it. In the 70s, the record labels wanted you to sell records. They wanted you to sell singles. Okay, and if they felt that you were doing that, they would really push you. I honestly don't think that Rory really cared that much about that. He was very happy doing what he was doing. Tour album. He did albums that he wanted to hear. And I just don't think the record label ever really gave him enough of a push because he really wasn't that guy. Was he one of the greatest guitar players on the planet? Sure. Do you love him and I love him? Absolutely. There was never that big breakthrough moment for him. And, you can look at guys, like Robin Trower had the Bridge of Sighs album and a handful of tunes that you can still hear on classic rock radio. Nugent, obviously, bunch of popular things. Rick Derringer, Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo. You can, Christ, I remember even hearing Frank Marino on the radio occasionally back in the day. But, Rory, never heard him, ever. Just wasn't played on the radio. Was he too bluesy? Maybe. Great guitar player, though, right? From Anno Forte, I hope that my question post is relevant and useful. It's related to a group of hardworking bands who, for a range of reasons or merely bad luck, failed to hit the big time. Do a few of these new wave of British heavy metal bands deserve, to use your term, honorable mentions? Tigers of Pantang. I mean, I've talked about Tigers of Pantang before. They were a really good band. Still are. Their last couple albums have been great. They should have been bigger here anyway. I know they had a nice following in Europe, but not much here. Alcatraz, the British rock band, the first album, Youngblood, so that's obviously not Graham Bonnet's band. I've never heard that band before. Can't comment on them. Legend from the Channel Islands, first album self-titled in '81. I've never heard that before either. Angel Witch, first self-titled album '81. Yeah, I've talked about Angel Witch before. That first album is damn good. Probably one of the most important and best of all those new wave of British heavy metal albums. And even their return, their reunion album that they did a bunch of years ago, damn good also. Demon's first album, Night of the Demon from '81. I like that album a lot. You know, the thing about Demon is that they came out with this like image that really the music had nothing to do with that image. So many people were like, you know, like young metalheads who were into that whole new wave of British heavy metal scene, saw that first Demon album come out and the name of the band and the album cover. And they're like, oh, this is going to be some heavy, gnarly stuff, man. Then you play it, and it's just like a really good melodic hard rock band. And that's all their albums are. And they're all very good. But I think they get kind of shit on nowadays because people remember, especially people my age, remember the disappointment. But if you'd forget all that stuff and just go back and listen to those Demon albums, they're really good. Really good. You know, kind of like, if you like Magnum, not that much different. Good use of keyboards, lots of hooks, you know, tasty guitar riffs, great vocals. Samson, particularly the Bruce Dickinson era, such Head On, 1980. Samson stuff's pretty solid. And then Tank, Filth Hounds of Hades from '82. Yeah, that early Tank stuff was pretty good. To me, they're kind of like Motorhead, but more numbskullish, if that makes any sense. But a lot of really good bands. And these are some of the more, you know, not so well-known acts from that whole scene, right? But all good. I give them a lot of honorable mentions and credits, right? All right, from Scalagrimmer Kvoltsilsen. Hi, Pete. Thank you for all the work you put into these Q&A. My question this time, do you like all kinds of extreme metal, or are there styles that are too extreme for your taste? I listen to some death metal or black metal myself, but some extreme metal just sounds like a constant stream of noise to me, and I can't enjoy it. So I got really heavily into extreme metal probably right around, I don't know, 2004, 2005. And for a number of years, that's basically all I was listening to. Until about like maybe 4 years ago, I started to get a little tired of it, and I'll tell you why. Because it's, you know, when you're running a website like Sea Tranquil and you're getting all these labels and bands sending you their stuff to review, you know, for a while there, like, it seemed like 75% of what was being sent our way was extreme metal stuff. And after a while, man, I started to notice that a lot of the bands all started to sound the same, and there was just not any separation. It was one band after another, faceless, nameless, all sounding the same. Whether it was black metal, death metal, thrash, you know, grindcore, all that kind of stuff. And after a while, it was just like, oh my God. So I started, in recent years, it's like the bands that I still gravitate towards from that scene are the ones that, you know, the veteran bands who have done very well, who have very unique sounds, you know, like your Dark Tranquility and, you know, Mayhem and Enslaved and, you know, and you know all the bigger band, you know, Nile. There's a lot of them that I still follow, but Amorphous. You know, it's bands that have just been doing it for a long time. That's done. Every album's fresh and exciting, but man, these new bands just keep coming out of the woodwork. And it's all the same shit. So, but as far as like what do I like this? So I still like a lot of really classic sounding death metal. I like a lot of the like progressive technical death metal. But again, there's so many of those too. I've really soured on like melodic death metal and metalcore because quite frankly, in the early, you know, melodic death metal used to be something really good. You know, you had bands like At the Gates and early Soilwork and Dark Tranquility, maybe even Arch Enemy early on, you know, bands that really were doing something really cool, you know, adding like progressive elements to this melodic sound that's still brutal. But then you had all these metalcore bands that were just basically trying to ape that melodeath sound from, you know, Sweden specifically. And now you got so many, you know, I mean, look at In Flames. What the hell happened to them? They're basically just a crappy metalcore band now. And I've never been a big hardcore fan, so that whole like kind of like let's throw some hardcore elements into death metal just does not do it for me at all. So, but you know, black metal too. There's like so many black metal bands out there, and it's, you know, who's going to sound more raw and more primal and more cult than the next, right? But I still like I personally I love like black metal bands that kind of are like I love Enslaved. Because they take like that classic black metal sound and they've added so much prog into it. You know, I can appreciate. I love Immortal, right? Love Immortal. So I can't listen to grindcore at all anymore, at all. And God, it's just, yeah, I really pick and choose what I really get into now when it comes to extreme metal, because some of it's just like I just can't listen to it. And some of the vocal styles, it's like I've also gotten to the point where it's like, and I don't mind extreme metal vocals and growls, but man, these bands that come up there and do these pig grunts and do the million miles an hour, you can't understand anything. It's like I like the growlers who you can kind of make out what they're singing, like Vader. What a great singer Peter is, man. He does the death metal growls, but man, you can understand everything he's saying. It just sounds awesome, right? So, good question. From Arnaud B. My question, you don't seem to be a huge fan of Mike Oldfield. What bugs you in his music, especially the 70s output? All right. Just because I don't talk about a band on this show does not mean that I don't like them. Okay, it could be just that I've liked what I've heard. Maybe I don't own. Maybe the reason why I haven't done a Mike Oldfield show is because all I own is Tubular Bells. It's all I've ever had. All right, it's not because I don't like a band or an artist. It's just that, I mean, how many million of them can you cover on this show? Look at all the stuff that I own. I don't own everything. I have a lot of stuff. So no, I don't dislike Mike Oldfield. I may not be a huge fan, but I like what I've heard. I like what I own. So nothing bugs me about his music. All right, so don't take it the wrong way if you don't see a band covered on this show. Okay, it just means that maybe I don't own their catalog, or I just haven't been exposed to them. Yeah, I've been exposed to a lot of music, but it's there's millions and millions of artists and bands out there. Can't cover it all. Can't listen to it all. From Jamie Laszlo. I once heard you say that it's possible that no one has as many well-known songs as Elton John. You mentioned Tom Petty might come close. Well, I'd like to add an artist to this list. Neil Diamond. Yes, he has a lot of sappy songs in his catalog, but a lot of these are from the 80s. In my opinion, it's hard to beat his 70s output with songs like Cracklin' Rosie, Kentucky Woman, Cherry Cherry, and Holly Holy. So what's your take on Neil Diamond? I know a lot of people grew up with their mom being a fan, but at the same time, Deep Purple thought he was cool enough to record one of his songs. I never really had a lot of exposure to Neil Diamond. My parents didn't listen to him. And honestly, this was a great question. It made me think. It's like, because, Elton John had a shitload of hits. Like, hits that, like, anybody, you mention the song, they're like, oh, I know that song. Tom Petty, too. So I've listened to a lot of AM radio in my time, a lot of FM radio in my time, and I've listened to a lot of stuff in general. So I was like, all right, I know the obvious Neil Diamond stuff. Sweet Caroline, obviously. Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon, obviously, also made even more popular from the Pulp Fiction movie. And Cracklin' Rosie, obviously, another really, really great tune. But I went and listened to like Cherry Cherry and Holly Holy and a bunch of other tunes, like on his like mandatory, like definitive collection and all that kind of stuff. I don't remember hearing those ever, anywhere. So for me, I would say Neil Diamond, yeah, a couple really, really memorable tunes and popular songs, but I would say so much of like what the world seems to consider, definitive hit classics and all that kind of stuff. I don't remember ever hearing these songs ever. So I wouldn't put him up in that upper echelon, but again, maybe it's just me. Maybe I just wasn't, the radio stations here that I listened to didn't play Neil Diamond, I guess, or maybe because my parents didn't play him. I don't know, but a good question, good feedback, right? From Tate Davis, another great video. My question this time is about Blackfoot. What is your favorite song off of their Strikes album? Highway Song. Love Highway Song. A lot of great tunes on that. Some great covers on that album, huh? Wishing Well, right? But Highway Song always did it for me. I love that band. From Scott Cushing, how about Nitzinger? One Foot in History, some good stuff. Cripple Nat Bounce. I have only heard and have the self-titled debut album, which I like quite a bit. Good bluesy hard rock. I should check out those other ones too. From Richard W. Hey Pete, have you heard the Soul album released by Witness in 1988? Fronted by female powerhouse vocalist Debbie Davis. The music was recorded with the help of Steve Smith and Neil Schon from Journey, Brad Gillis from Night Ranger, Danny Chauncey from 38 Special, and super guitarist Tim Pierce. Neither guitarist Damon Johnston nor bass player Eddie Usher are performing on the album, even though they're being credited there. Oh, that's interesting to know. So Damon Johnson, of course, was also in... he played with Rick Derringer, or is it Johnny Winter? Jesus, not Rick Derringer, I believe he played with, and also was in Alcatraz too, if I remember correctly. No, I'm thinking about someone else. No, I'm thinking about Damon Johnson. That's not who I'm getting confused here. Too many names. Anyway, the band had tremendous support from famous rock stars like Desmond Child, Bon Jovi, and Richie Sambora, who wrote a couple tunes. Michael Bolton, Martin Briley co-wrote the song "Am I Wrong?" Blah 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 blah. I remember hearing about this album back in the day. I never owned it, never listened to it. I gave it a listen to a bunch of tunes. Pretty solid. Kind of reminds me of like Pat Benatar's more rock and stuff. It's a little dated, very 80s sounded, but like I said, if you like Pat Benatar's more kind of like arena rock stuff, I think you'll dig it. Good hard rock, really great keyboards and guitar work. I liked it. Kind of cool. From Stephen Race. Okay, so I know you've done a top 10 songs of this band, but I'd also love to see you do a history of King Crimson show of their studio albums, including shedding some light on Robert Fripp's solo work with the album Exposure and the work he did with Brian Eno and Andy Summers. And second, would you ever consider doing a history of 70s German krautrock new age music show? That would give credit to bands like Amon Duel 2, Guru, Faust, Popol Vuh, Hawkwind, Cluster, Kraftwerk, Klaus Schultz, Helden, Eloy, Tangerine Dream, and Asherah Temple. Your thoughts? As far as doing a history of King Crimson, possibly. I could possibly do that at some point. As far as like doing a history of 70s German, honestly, I don't know enough about most of these bands to even do it. Other than like, Eloy and Hawkwind and maybe a little Tangerine Dream. Most of these other bands I've listened to stuff here and there, but I don't know enough about any of them to give them just due, so I wouldn't be the guy to do that. From Mike F. Hey, Pete, hope you don't mind a couple more questions. What do you think of Harem Scarem, and how often do you do your What's Hot new release series? Thank you for what you do. Harem Scarem's good. Good melodic rock band, man. It's like nothing bad you could say about them. I have a couple guys who write for me here on Sea of Tranquility on the website who love Harem Scarem. Good stuff. I like that kind of stuff. And how often do I do my What's Hot releases? I mean, I used to do them weekly. Now it's all dependent on, fitting them in with everything else. And when I get like enough cool new releases to cover, I actually have a nice little stack of things that I'm going to be doing this week of new releases I want to talk about. What we got? The new Morgul Bowl, the new Iron Savior, the new Black Sabbath book from Martin Popoff, a whole host of stuff over there. So I'm going to do that, a couple of them this week. So I'd love to do one a week at least. So it all depends on kind of what's coming in, what I have to talk about. So, but yeah, I like doing them. Got to turn everybody on to new music, right? From Robert Stacy. If you could pick a supergroup, who would they be? More supergroup questions. All right, so without overthinking things. Paul Rodgers on vocals, Robin Trower on guitar, John Bonham on drums, John Lord on Hammond organ, Tim Bogert on bass. God, you could do a whole show on different supergroup configurations. From Rand Kelly. Hey, Pete, how about a Procol Harum best to worst albums? Could possibly do that. I've added to my list. Thanks for that. From Peter Keir. Hey, Pete. Great post. Thanks once again. Question. I heard Slow and Easy by Whitesnake the other day for the first time in years. Forgot how blistering hot it is. How about a top 10 sexiest or get you in the mood metal songs? Well, I don't know, man. Like I said, my wife is not into metal, so if I'm going to play, sexy, get you in the mood tunes, I'm not playing metal because she doesn't dig metal. So if you would ask me this question, like 30 years ago, I might have been able to answer it, but that's a good question. From DT, great show, Pete. What's your take on krautrock legends Tangerine Dream? I'm a huge fan, but seldom hear them mentioned in these forums, despite them being hugely influential. Thanks. I like the old Tangerine Dream stuff quite a bit. I have most, if not all, of their 70s albums, and those are awesome. Yeah, you got to be in the mood for that stuff. I'm not always in the mood for Tangerine Dream, but it's nice that when I am, I could just put, Z It on or Stratosphere or any of those great albums, and it's just mind-blowing stuff, right? Influential, yeah. Different, yeah. I mean, just great stuff. They were innovators, right? Total innovators. From John McAlar, wondering if you would ever do a top 10 record producers, engineers show. I know when I purchase music, I like to check out who produced it and where it was recorded. Also, maybe top 10 recording studios. I could possibly do a top 10 record producers / engineers. I know I have some that I've really liked their work over the years, so that's possible. Like Martin Birch and so many great guys. Matty Boy Walker. Hey, Pete, as always, love your videos. Thanks for everything. Loved your recent Thin Lizzy videos. I was wondering, did you by any chance see the Sykes and Gorham-led version of Thin Lizzy that toured from 99 to 09? I did twice, and Sykes did a great job singing those songs and can be found on the One Night Only live album. They had Tommy Aldridge and Marco Mendoza and in and out of the band too. What's your opinion of that lineup? I did see them once. I saw them open up for Deep Purple actually. And I thought they were really good, because at the time, Thin Lizzy in any incarnation had been defunct for so long. So for me, it was I thought it was pretty cool. I saw the Thin Lizzy lineup with Vivian Campbell, a few years after that. So we miss Phil though, right? From Captain Howdy, great Q&A last week. My question is, what is your opinion on bands that changed their sound from when they started to get more radio play or different fans? 2 examples. First 2 Def Leppard albums, and they got rid of Pete Willis, and they were never the same. Metallica, After Justice, not the same. Blah, 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 blah. Sorry for the long question. Hope you haven't had this before. No, actually, I'm actually going to do a rant on this. It's on my list to do. If you listen to my little announcement video the other day, I'm going to do a whole rant on bands who came out in a certain style and then completely changed face and did something completely different. So be on the lookout for that. From Peter Brickley. Pete, well done and very informative channel. You're helping bands as well with descriptions of sounds. Okay, a few questions. Have you heard these Japanese groups, Speed Glue and Shinki, Bow Wow's first LP, Jinbei, or Mariner? If not, check into them. Other than hearing little things from Bow Wow, I've never heard any of those bands. Also, which LP was your favorite when you were wasted and totally ripped in your past or present? I mean, I don't get totally wasted and ripped much at all, maybe once or twice a year. And it's not like when I was younger, I'll tell you that much. But when I was younger, like when I was a teenager, I hope mom and dad are not watching this. When I was a teenager, when I first started, experimenting, doing a little drinking and things like that, I used to love nothing better than to catch a major buzz and sit down in front of my stereo and blast Deep Purple's Child in Time. That used to just put me in another dimension, and I loved it. I still enjoy listening to that when I've had a few beers. Now I think a tune I probably reach for more now when I've had some beers and I really get into it is like Rainbow Stargazer. But also like throughout the 80s, I remember kind of listening to, Metallica's Ride the Lightning or Slayer, Rain and Blood, those albums, if I was pretty hammered, I would love putting those on and totally getting into them. But I would think the ultimate for me, just from remembering being a kid and just sitting in front and listening to, Ian Gillan screaming and Richie launching into his guitar solo and John Lawrence and Hammond and just being 10 minutes of just total oral pleasure, fueled by alcohol, obviously. But, yeah, good question. From Icaro Borges. Hey, Pete, want to know your thoughts on the prog rock band Mystery. Never seen you talk about them, and if you're not familiar with them, I recommend their 2015 album called Delusion Reign. Yeah, I know Mystery. Listened to them for a while. We're good friends with the Unicorn Digital folks. Michelle up there, who's actually in Mystery. Great Canadian band. Love them. Very accessible, kind of AOR/prog type of thing. I always kind of liken them a little bit to they don't sound like Saga, but very accessible kind of progressive music. I like it a lot with a lot of good hard rock elements. From Emilio Valdez, heard you talking about GTR and Max Bacon. Did you dig the Taken by Storm album by Bronze with Bacon singing? One of my guilty pleasures since release day. Yeah, that's a nice little slice of accessible metal, kind of like new wave of British heavy metal, very, very commercial sounding, but good and heavy and rocking. I like that album. You also mentioned you liked Lowland's guitar god Adrian Vandenberg. Have you heard his first band Teaser? If not, I absolutely recommend giving it a try, especially if you're into all things Purple like I am. Yeah, I mean, the Teaser band was great. God, I don't even know if you can find that anywhere other than maybe buying an old LP. I don't know if that was ever released on CD. I don't think they sound like Purple at all, though. When I hear Teaser, to me, they sound like classic Free or Bad Company. Bluesy guitar riffs and just, the singer's got like this Paul Rogers thing going. One more question from Emilio. How do you feel about Acid Mother's Temple? What about a history or best albums thing about those dudes? I honestly had never heard much of any Acid Mother's Temple till today. And it's kind of cool, space rocky psych type of stuff, but I don't know any of their music, and I wouldn't be the guy to do a history of or top 10 songs or anything like that because like I said, don't own the music. Not really familiar with them other than just some stuff I heard. Pretty cool, though. A lot of nice, cool, jammy guitar stuff. From William Marold. Great show, Pete. Scorps Uli John Roth is the best. Have you ever listened to Toad from Switzerland? Have you ever checked out my top underground hard rock albums of the 70s shows, dude? I talked a lot about Toad in one of them. Yeah, those first 3 albums are really, really cool. That self-titled debut is awesome. Go to my playlist and watch those, the history of ones. I believe that's the playlist. The history of bands and artists and genres. In there, you'll find a couple of my favorite, I think there's 3 shows. Best hard rock and early metal albums of the 70s, and I did 2 underground ones. That's in one of the underground ones. Good band. From NP. How about a show not focused on one specific band, but on live versions of songs that you think are better than the studio recordings? I like that idea. Added it to my list. From Andrew G. Dick. Hey, Pete, do you plan on going to see Nick Mason's Saucerful of Secrets on this U.S. tour? I saw them in Glasgow last September and highly recommend it, playing early Pink Floyd songs that you won't hear anywhere else. I met him after the show, one of the nicest rock stars around. I mean, you know, he's playing here now. A couple of people I know have gone to see him recently. I don't have him on my list to go. I got too many other things in the agenda, on the concert agenda, and with everything else I'm doing. It's like, you know, I'm trying to keep my concerts I'm going to kind of a minimum. From Marvel Fan 45. I know there's only one question a week, but what's your opinion on Meatloaf with Jim Steinman? Oh, I think I kind of answered this on the last show. I like Meatloaf, especially the classic stuff, and for me, it's kind of like the Elton John, Bernie Taupin thing. They go together, right? I think Meatloaf and Jim Steinman is a dynamite pairing. He writes great songs. Meat can sing them. They go together, right? Every time they work together, we've had some magic. It's when Meat does the stuff on his own that's not quite the same, right? From Bill Goodwin. I recently pulled out my Witch Find CDs. Great band that didn't get the recognition as other new wave of British heavy metal bands. Anyways, what is your favorite album by them? You know, those first three are really good. Crappy production on them, though, right? Yeah, I probably Give 'Em Hell, the debut, I lean towards a little more. It's a little heavier than the other two, a little more evil sounding. It's got the worst production of the three. But the third one, Cloak and Dagger, is really good, too. You know, so you can't go wrong with the first three. I dig them. From Pittsburgh Rocks, are you familiar with the music of British singer-songwriter Duncan Browne? He released 2 art rock albums in '78, The Wild Places and '79 Streets of Fire, that features a sophisticated blend of lush romantic pop, roots rock, and light prog touches. Kind of a blend of late Roxy music and early Dire Straits. Great supporting musicians, including drum god Simon Phillips. Dude, I have not heard any of those. Never even heard of Duncan Browne before. From James Ferranti, have you ever heard of the band The Hello People, who were part mime and musical act and were the backup band for some of Todd Rundgren's early '70s tours? I don't remember ever hearing The Hello People. They used to mime between songs. Interesting. Miming was big in the '70s. Remember Shields and Yarnell? I used to watch Shields and Yarnell all the time. They had that variety show. Crazy. Man, the '70s. Another question from Rand Kelly. Pete, listen to early Thin Lizzy. I noticed Eric Bell playing dueling guitar solos, otherwise known as duets, with a guitar in each speaker and sometimes playing solos during the verse and chorus of the songs. Quite out of the ordinary because none of the bands I played in did that. Black Sabbath's Tony Iommi does that dueling guitar thing in early albums as well. So what do you and the viewers think about those? I mean, yeah, it's pretty cool, right? You have one guitar. I mean, I actually... You know, Thin Lizzy always is kind of talked about as being kind of the originators of that whole, you know, dual harmony guitar thing, twin guitar thing. They weren't, but they made it famous. Wishbone Ash and the Allman Brothers were actually doing that way before. But you're absolutely correct. If you listen to those first couple of, like, Thin Lizzy albums, Eric Bell was actually, you know, doing overdubs with dual guitar lines even before those other cats joined the band. So they were kind of experimenting with that a little bit even early on, before they had 2 guitar players. And yeah, Iommi did that too, quite a bit too. It's amazing what you could do in the studio, right? But if you go listen to those early, you know, Wishbone Ash albums, we're talking like 1970, right? Allman Brothers stuff was in the late 60s. There was that stuff was already kind of happening, which is pretty cool. From Mike F. Hey, Pete, thank you for answering my questions. Sorry I was a little vague about new music first. I would like to that both Robin Trower and Yngwie Malmsteen are both legendary great guitar players, probably in my top 10. My thing is that when they do the singing, it is really bad. Neither one is a good singer. Malmsteen's rant about his singers in the past was kind of like being a baby. What is your opinion? I mean, I kind of hinted this before. Yeah, I like both. Well, we'll start with Robin Trower. I love Robin Trower. Love him. He's one of my earliest favorite guitar players. Big influence on me. I just still love him. He still plays great. 70-something years old. But he's chosen on his last couple solo albums to do the vocals himself. Nothing against Robin, man. It sounds like his voice is terrible. It's just not very good. And when you grew up listening to James Dewar, you know, or Davey Patton singing with Robin Trower, both great singers, and then Robin decides that he's going to do it all himself, and his voice is just not very good. Yngwie's the same way, you know. I think it's more of a, he just, you know, he's got such a big ego. He doesn't want to have to deal with singers. So he's like, I might as well sing myself. You know, Yngwie's also not a great singer. He's not awful, but I'd rather have a really strong vocalist pairing up with Yngwie. So I totally agree with you there. From Elias Kokinos, hello, Mr. Pardo. Wanted to ask your opinion on bands that change completely their sound, like Rainbow or Opeth. Is it always for artistic reasons or commerciality? And check Witch Hazel and Sanhedrin. You will love them. Thank you. Same questions, well, same response as the earlier question. I'm going to do a show all on bands who completely changed musical course midway or later in their career and did something completely different, so we'll cover some of that stuff. I've never listened to Witch Hazel, but Sanhedrin are very good. In fact, I think they just opened up for Lucifer in New York City a couple days ago. Sanhedrin's a very good band. From Kenny Ricci, hey Pete, have you ever heard of Henry Paul? Of course. He's the singer for the band from the Outlaws. In the late 70s, he released a solo album called Grey Ghost. The title song is right up there with Freebird as a guitar southern rock anthem. Actually, the whole album rocks. Check it out. Henry Paul's great. The Henry Paul Band, their first, 4 albums are awesome. He's now basically, once again, the leader of the Outlaws. I love Henry Paul. Great voice. Writes great songs. I love the Outlaws. I love the Henry Paul Band. Like I said, we're going to do a Southern rock show at some point in the not-too-distant future, and I will be talking more about Henry Paul Band. From Pipe Man, 1958, hey Pete, Mark Hollis of the band Talk Talk has recently passed away at the age of 64. Rest in peace. So many people, including myself, think he was a musical genius. I would really appreciate it if you could please listen to at least these 3 albums of Talk Talk. Spirit of Eden. Many people say Spirit of Eden is a masterpiece. The Color of Spring and Laughingstock. I also love their other 2 albums, their debut, The Party's Over, and It's My Life. Check out their song, Renee. It is such a heartfelt song. Mark Hollis sings this song from his soul. The song Renee is on their album, It's My Life. Pete, can you please respond to my comments and mention this on your next week's Q&A? I'm hoping that you'll tell us your thoughts about this album and the song, about these albums and the song Renee. This is my first time asking to be a part of your Q&A. I really love your channel. Thanks. Sorry, Pipe Man, 1958. Talk Talk just puts me to sleep. They don't do anything for me. Don't shoot me. Don't shoot the messenger, man. I went out and I checked out a bunch of your albums here and listened to songs here and there. And I just right before we went on air, I listened to Renee again just to see if I'm missing something. It's just not my cup of tea, man. It's just, to me, it's just really boring, kind of lightweight stuff. I know a lot of people like them. And it's cool that you do. I don't need to like everything that you guys like, all right? This is not my cup of tea. Remember, you're watching this show and you're asking me these questions. Remember that the stuff that I really love is like hard rock and metal and prog and jazz fusion, classic rock stuff. A lot of you guys are like asking me to listen to stuff and asking me questions about bands that don't, again, I know I like a lot of different stuff, but I hope you just don't feel offended if you ask me about a band that you love that kind of falls far from outside those genres and I tell you I don't like them, all right? It's great that you like them, and it's great that I don't like them or do like them. It doesn't really matter. All that matters is that you like them, right? Okay, but yeah, they're not my, Talk is not my cup of tea, okay? From Bonalong, why do you think the American prog bands of the 70s never got bigger than they should have? For example, excellent groups like Happy the Man, Hands, Starcastle, and Fire Ballet. Well, Hands was never signed to a label. That's why. Happy the Man, great band, but at the time, Happy the Man came out, the prog heyday was already done. So Arista didn't know what the hell to do with Happy the Man. And if the record label's not fully behind you and promoting you and marketing you, you're not going to sell anything. And there's, quite frankly, you're not going to play Happy the Man on the radio. Starcastle, kind of the same thing. I thought Starcastle might have had more of an opportunity, but again, how much was the label behind them, I don't know. And Fire Ballet, pretty unknown, okay? If the good thing, Yes and Genesis, and maybe not Genesis so much. Yeah, Genesis a little bit, but Yes and Rush and some, ELP and stuff. A lot of their tunes got played on the radio. Record label was totally behind them. Big tours, all that kind of stuff. These bands, all these bands mentioned here right now kind of came after that big wave of prog. It already kind of died down. Back it up a couple of years and any of these bands might have done a lot better for themselves. For Maurice Gregoracci, hope that's how you say it. Hey Pete, Maurice G from Melbourne, Australia. Love the show. I have got into lots of great artists thanks to you. Cool, that's what it's all about. My bank balance is weaker these days, but that's cool. Yeah, you and me both, right? My soul is richer thanks to you. Just got introduced to Flower Kings from Sweden. Have you heard of them? If so, what do you think? Of course, I've talked about the Flower Kings a lot. I've been listening to the Flower Kings since the early 90s, man. Great band. A lot of great albums. Epic stuff. Another question for you. With so many CDs, have you ever bought a CD that you already have? I have about 4,000 CDs, and it's embarrassing but funny. You know what? Honestly, I don't think I ever have. What I have done, though, and I've done this more than a few times, and more than I care to admit, is over the course of the years, I have, because I have so much, I go through once or twice a year, and I purge some stuff. I'm like, God, I haven't listened to that in a million years. I'm going to get rid of it, and I sell it. I either give it away or I sell it on Amazon or whatever it is. And on numerous occasions, I have actually done that. I used to do it a lot in the 90s. And in recent years, I'm like, I get back into that band or artist, and I'm like, oh, Christ, I used to have those 2 CDs, and I sold them, and I wound up going and buying them again, right? That's the worst. That's why I really try with stuff. It's like, am I ever going to listen to this again? Do I even really like this? If the answer is no on both of them, get rid of it. From Integrity 101, anyone have any suggestions for transferring an entire CD collection to digital for listening offline? I bought an iPod but didn't realize how little memory it has. I filled it up with only 12 or so bands. What size iPod did you get, man? Don't waste your time on getting those little tiny iPod things. Go out and get an iPod Classic. You can get really good used ones, 160 gigabytes. You can fit thousands and 20,000. 25,000 songs on it. I have 2 160 gig iPods. Okay, they don't make them anymore, but you can get them out there, either refurbished or barely used for like $100, $150. I got most of my CD collection on those 2 iPods. Okay, half on one, half on the other. I'm telling you, don't waste time buying these little 8 gig iPods or whatever. You can't fit shit on those. Go out and get an iPod Classic, 160 gig. I'm telling you. Go out, search on eBay. I just bought another one because the one I had, the battery went kaplooey on me. So I bought another one. It was $100. Great condition, barely used. Okay? Like new. I'm telling you. So that's what I recommend. What else? From Richard Strickler. I know acoustic type folk rock is not your wheelhouse, but if you would make a comment on the following artists in that genre, I would appreciate your input. Crosby, Stills, Nash. I like them. A lot of good songs. A lot of good hits. Don't dislike them at all. I have a nice collection, every now and then pull it out. America, I like America. That was a really good band. Great songs. Great songs. Kind of folky pop, man. Love it. Firefall, another really good band, right? Kind of like country rock. I have a good, I have I think hit collections on all these artists here that we're going to mention. Poco, another good one. All right. Yeah, Timothy B. Schmidt before he joined the Eagles. Loggins and Messina, some good tunes. Okay. Linda Ronstadt, a lot of great songs. All right, great singer. Cutie when she was younger. Jim Croce, the only one out of all these that I don't own anything on, other than the couple of his big hits. I don't really know anything about him, other than he was pretty popular, and those couple of good songs are really, really good. From Robert Stacy, have you heard of the band Riot? Of course I have, dude. Come on, I've talked about Fire Down Under numerous times on this show. One of my favorite hard rock albums of that era. Riot were a great band, and even in their current incarnation, what is it called? Riot V, Riot 5, or whatever it's called. Really good, talented band. Great songs. Those, God, what their second, third, fourth, and fifth albums, great. From Scott McGregor, hey Pete, thanks for always honestly answering my questions. I never listened to much Gary Moore. However, after you did the show with Butch, I wrote down most of your top 10 songs. I ventured to other songs and even Coliseum too. Wow, is there anything that this guy can't do? No, that's why he's so missed, man. He could do it all. I can't believe I missed him. I always heard of him, but just never listened to him. Can you recommend 3 CDs to start with that highlight his prolific career? Lastly, how about top 10 albums or songs by Jeff Beck or Moody Blues? I've got Jeff Beck on my list to do. Moody Blues might get to that at some point also. So here's where I would go with Gary Moore. If you want to pick 3 studio albums, I'm going to give you my 3 favorites. You can't go wrong with these, I'm telling you. Corridors of Power, Victims of the Future, and Back on the Streets. They're awesome. If you want to get a live album that has a lot of his great tunes from that period in time, so we're talking like late 70s, early mid 80s, get the We Want More live album. That's awesome. One of the best guitar live albums there is. He's just on fire on that. So that's what I would do. I would get those 3 studio albums, then maybe get the We Want More album. And then, if you like bluesy stuff, obviously try the Still Got the Blues album, which is really, really good. But he's got so many great albums. So try those out. Let me know what you think, and then get back to me, and I can give you more recommendations. But that's your best place to start. Those are my 3 favorite Gary Moore studio albums, solo albums. From Lucille Childs, as we wind up this another edition of Epic Questions and Answers. Lucille Childs, hello Pete. New to your channel, I was wondering if you have ever heard of a Swedish band called Opeth, and have you listened to any of their music? All right, you're new to my channel, so I'm not going to bust your chops too much. But yeah, I've been a huge Opeth fan for like, God, 10, 15 years now, and I've talked about them numerous times on this show. So you need to start going back and watching some of the content on here. I've talked a lot about Opeth. I love Opeth. I love their early death metal stuff. I love their new progressive stuff, hard rock stuff. I'm an Opeth fan, big fan. Great, great band. If you ever need recommendations on if you're not, I don't know, are you familiar with Opeth, or are you just asking me, say a question like that? I'm not really sure if you're familiar or you love them a lot, want to know if I like them, or if you were just real new to them and want to know where should you go with the Opeth catalog. So how about in this questions and answers show, in the comments and feedback, expand on your question. What more do you want to know about Opeth? Okay, thanks, Lucille. Alex Hamilton, last question of the day. Hey Pete, loving the shows. As always, got a couple questions. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on McKendree Spring. I bought McKendree Spring 3 way back in '72 after seeing them on a British music show. I absolutely love that album, especially Down by the River. Flying Dutchman, Feeling Bad ain't good enough, but the rest of the songs are great too. I'd like to hear what you think of them. What about the British band Paladin? Have you ever heard of them? The album Charge is pretty good. Okay, first off, I have never heard of McKendree Spring. I'll have to go check them out. I've never heard of them at all. Paladin, Charge is a damn good album. I have that. I like that quite a bit. That's a pretty cool album. Love the album cover artwork on that too, right? Pretty damn good. So, all right. I'm bushed. An hour and 25 minutes long. So, you know the drill. Add your new questions into the feedback or comment section below, and I'll answer them in 2 weeks on our next show. Please remember, if you didn't hear your questions today, that's because they've already been asked and answered before. So if you're a little unsure about whether your question has been answered, it means either A, you're not watching the shows, or B, just go back and look at some of the other episodes. Just scan through the comment section. There's usually about 100 of them in there. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. It's pretty easy just to kind of flip through and see what's been asked before. But please watch the show before you start asking the questions, though. All right. I get the feeling that some of you are asking questions that are already being answered in the show that you're typing down. So before you start typing, watch the episode. I know it's long, but watch the episode, see what I got to say, hear the questions, hear the answers, and then put your questions in. All right, guys? So in the meantime, visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're on the mighty YouTube. All sorts of good stuff coming up this week. I'm hoping to get to this week. We're scheduled for tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. Dan Browne and I are doing our James Gang top 10 songs, as well as our top 10, or it might be top 20, favorite live songs from live albums. Okay, that's been asked by a lot of people. So we're going to hopefully get to that. I'm going to try and squeeze in the Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush top 10 songs this week, as well as I got some new products I want to talk about this week. So that's all coming this week. Tune in, don't miss any of it, and we'll see you again real soon. Take care.